All right, we are live. This is the Black. What was that? It sounded. It sounded like it came in with a kiss. This is the Black Powder Podcast. Yours truly, Marcus Matthews. Michael White couldn't be with us tonight. I got my guy Eric Parker, Bold Liberty, down in Jacksonville, Florida, representing on the Black Powder Podcast, and we have a great episode for you today. And I wanted to introduce somebody that I recently met at the Chase Oliver meet and greet here in beautiful Southern California. Mr. Jeff Hewitt, former Riverside County commissioner. Was it commissioner?
No, actually, it's supervisor in California, but it's the same as commissioners are in the other states.
And you were Cali Mesa City Council as well, right?
I was on the city council and I was the mayor for 3 years. Yeah.
Now, the reason I wanted to mention that because my good man, Mr. Hewitt, is a libertarian. And oftentimes we talk about how libertarians can't govern. But we have a shining example today of how libertarians can govern. And both the city of Cali Mesa and Riverside County still exist. There wasn't any, it's not a anarchist utopia or anything like that because a libertarian was elected. We have a stable governance, and that's why I wanted to have you on. Real quick, I want to shout out the bills that are being paid. We have 1776swag.com. Do we have a discount code on them yet or anything like that?
It's in the works. So
gotcha. And then we have Common Arms Trade Company, also down in Florida, and use the code Black Powder for 10% off any order over $100. So, Eric, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing great, man. As you can see, I'm doing it remote from the cell phone today. Or I don't know if that's what you're like. Man, Eric really downgraded. He's got a window unit AC in his house now. I'm in the camper, so you know what I mean. My wife didn't kick me out or anything. I'm just out on some family hunting property, so we're remote.
Nice. So, Mr. Hewitt, we want to give you the forum at this point to tell us. You know, I listed a few of your a couple of your accomplishments. I think I need 3 to be a few. But tell us how you came to be a libertarian. What was your origin story?
Well, I became a libertarian in the year around 1976.
Nice.
And that was the first time that there was a libertarian candidate actually listed in California for president of the United States. And I was in San Diego State. I was a student. I'd been there about 3 or 4 years, and I saw this guy running, and you know, it said what he was about. And I'm this young guy in my 20s, and I'm thinking, wow, can they have a party like this? A party that actually allows people to do what they want and tells them not to go initiate force and take other people's stuff and all that. And I thought it was pretty cool. So I registered as a libertarian, and I've been it for decades and decades. I voted for a lot of people that didn't come close to winning, but I always felt good going away from the ballot box going, you know, I did my part. I voted for what I considered the best candidate. And that was for most of my life until 2010, when somebody asked me to run for city council in the city of Cali Mesa. And I'd been on the planning commission at that time. And I basically got elected, and I became an elected libertarian. And immediately, since elected libertarians are kind of like unicorns and the dodo birds and other things that have gone extinct, they're so far in between. I thought, man, I'm elected. I can change the world now. I have power. I'm this guy that wants small government so close to no government. You know, it's like, wow. And then I realized there's 4 other people on that city council, and they're not libertarians.
Right.
So anyway, I settled into it, and I did as much as I could around little things. And then 5 years later, when I was in the first year of my second term, is when an opportunity came up, and it was then that I made national news when I kicked Cal Fire, the state fire agency that was being contracted through the county to my small city. I basically said, no, you are no longer welcome here because you're forcing us to add another firefighter on each one of our 3 shifts. And that's going to cost over $600,000. And we only have a $6 million general fund for a city of about 8,500 people at the time. And
Wow.
so everybody told me, hey, you're crazy. You're committing political suicide. And well, I like what you're trying to do. All these other electeds that I knew from surrounding cities and different agencies, but there's no way you're going to pull it off. In fact, you're making enemies. And so I said, look, it's political suicide if you follow a special interest over the constituents that have put their faith in you. And so lots of people said, well, just raise taxes. You don't say that to a libertarian. That's when those principles come in and go, oh no, God, no. And so, anyway, long story short, I got together a good team. Yeah, I got my colleagues on board with it, and we formed our own in-house fire department. And with sustainable pensions, that was the biggest thing. In California, we have so many unfunded liabilities with the ridiculous CalPERS and CalSTRS and other defined benefit pension programs. That's what's going to sink California and so many other states, and possibly the United States eventually if we don't get it under control. And so I got together with this team, and we formed a really good fire department. That was in 2017. And last year, by the state's own ranking, they rank all of the nearly 500 cities in California based on 10 fiscal criteria to see who's the most fiscally fit and who's the closest to going bankrupt. And they did this after 2012, when San Bernardino and Stockton, 2 cities of about 200,000 people, had gone bankrupt. And Calamasa was ranked number 1 out of all the cities for fiscal fitness based on those 10 criteria. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But before we get in any further into your resume, I want to ask this because I know a lot of people are asking this that are going to watch this later. Did Cali Mesa burn down at any point during your service to the city and your prudence in getting a local fire department versus relying on the state? Did it burn down? Did it suffer?
There were a lot of professional people that supposedly were, they were kind of almost hoping that it did, because look, you can't get by without us. But no, when we were forming the fire department, we also put in we bought a policy for state responsibility areas and different things like that. And so that we would have all the different fire forces come in, just because we were this rogue outside the club, so to speak, new department that the union hated it. The professional firefighters union were my biggest, obstacle to overcome. And they hated that. And so, no, there was a very big fire that came there, and it burnt down quite a few homes in a mobile home park. And we had been really wise and done the right thing, and we had all that, and it would have bankrupted the city. It costed probably $4 to $5 million for all the different things to fix it, but we'd bought that policy and done everything right. So when you do something in government, not only are you looking for ways to be more efficient and stuff, but you have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's. And I could have never done it without the team I put together with a former fire chief from a nearby fire department who was part of the good old.
Gotcha. Eric, did you have since my guy Eric, he ran for city council in Jacksonville, Florida, and these are the type of issues that cities are constantly dealing with. Eric, would you say this was been I'm assuming Jacksonville had its own fire department.
Yeah.
But does Florida have those same pension liability issues where you live?
I think I think they kind of, I'm not sure about the pension for, I know the police, they were doing away with a certain type of just straight up pension and instead going to the 4013B, whatever, the basically a 401k for non-profit or government employees. Now there is still several $billions of unfunded liabilities in Jacksonville because of other government pensions. And that was one of the issues that we kept trying to explain to people. You know, we had 3 libertarians running, and my guy, Ronald Tracy Robinson, was always, you know, reminding people like, we're a sinkhole city. We had like a D rating as far as cities in Florida. It was not good. And they want to be focused on giving $500 million for a stadium for a football team. I was like, I think the city should sell the stadium to the owner of the Jaguars for $3 billion and pay down our debt of $3 billion and be debt free. That's what the city should do instead of going 500 million in the hole to renovate a stadium. And I mean, there's been all kinds of economists and studies that show that taxpayer funded football stadiums are almost always a net negative for the taxpayer. So now as far, we do have the Great Fire of 1901, I think was the year in Jacksonville, is one of the reasons why I guess we might have had the first city-wide fire department because of that. It essentially burned down almost the whole. And you know, like a lot of people, like when you tell someone you're a libertarian, they always want to reference, the fire. Well, what about the fire department? I was like, look, I'm not an anarchist. I don't want to do away with all of the government. I just want them to be, forward thinking and held accountable when they're not doing the right thing. And like Jeff said, stay under budget and meet all the, milestones. And, one thing I know is like 70% of most calls that the fire department get are medical calls. So like I thought if I was to get in city council, I would have urged them to have a few more stations that were just paramedics with ambulances and they could be a smaller firehouse. You could have more of them. It would cost less to build them and they would be, more closer to where most of the calls would have been. But, like you bring that up to the fire union, they're not, they don't want to do away with the guys that could get paid the big money because they're an engineer and this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I never got in to be able to make those types of suggestions or changes, but that would have been something I would have recommended.
Eric,
Eventually you will. Go ahead, Jeff.
You hit it right on. You hit it right on the head. You basically 80 to 85% of all calls are actually EMS or emergency medical calls and don't require a firefighter or a fire engine. However, you take those away and then the firemen and their trucks sit around like, the what is that Westinghouse guy that's sitting around and he can't fix anything because they never break down.
Right.
The one, and so no, but so it's the union that keeps them in there because without that, now you have private ambulance companies, they all have paramedics and EMTs on there. Government doesn't. You can have, and you have Rural Metro, which is a private deliverer of fire services too. But again, it's these unions that are so powerful. They control everything. And if you get in there and there's actually the Cedar Rapids, Iowa and Sunnyvale, California are 2 cities that don't have cops or firefighters. They have public safety officials that are trained in both. They're totally different jobs, but cops, are go out on a lot more calls and everything, and they need to have a certain thing, but it can really keep your budget right now in California between 60 and 85% of the entire budget is for public safety in cities. And that doesn't leave much for anything else. So Eric, you hit on a lot of those things. And It's those private, it's those public sector unions, not just the firefighters, but it's the police unions and all the different unions that run up these huge unfunded liabilities. In Riverside County, of which I was a county supervisor, that unfunded liability was $4 billion. $4 billion. It was the largest one of all the 58 counties in California. And so these are things that just keep getting pushed down. And the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution pension, like a 401k, is that if the stock market doesn't keep up with these criteria for these really, really high pensions, then the taxpayer just has to keep kicking in. And they're in the private sector, they got rid of those a long time ago because they knew they weren't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So going a little bit forward in your resume, you touched on how you were a county supervisor and the county of Riverside's liabilities. How did you get elected to be, as a libertarian, to be a county supervisor?
Okay, so first of all, in California, and I don't know, I should know, but I don't know about Florida, whether you are on those local. I know in Louisiana, all local races, all the way down to dog catcher, are partisan, but local elections and a county supervisor is considered a local election. Local elections are actually nonpartisan. So when my name's on that ballot, there's no D, no R, no L behind it. So it gives you a better chance of winning. But nevertheless, you still have to, a county of 2.5 million people, it's the 10th largest county in the United States. You know, when you're trying, in my district that I was running in, there's 5 in all the counties except for San Francisco. In all 58 counties, there are 5 supervisors. And so I had 500,000 people that I had to go out there and I was going to represent. So that's a lot of voters. And so for me, I had some notoriety because of what I'd done with the fire department. I was able to raise $500,000, which is unheard of for a libertarian. And I beat a termed out Republican assemblyman who had raised over $2 million. But we just worked our tail off. I had a very, very sharp, hardworking campaign chair in Boomer Shannon.
Yeah, Boomer. He's a good
and he worked the heck out of this old guy. And we got 9 different canvassers or door knockers that came from all over the United States. And they'd kind of been working through the Young Americans for Liberty, so they were very good at the door knocking, but they wanted to come out and work for a real libertarian who had a chance to win a large seat, because they'd been working for a lot of liberty-leaning Republicans, so they could sell me at the door better than I could sell myself. And that was the big issue, why we pulled off probably the biggest upset in county history.
Right.
And did you reach out to Young Americans for Liberty? Did you reach out to, like, how were you able to get those canvassers?
I reached out to Young Americans for Liberty, but they said, look, the rules for our deal is basically that, and they would pay for them if I had been running for, say, the assembly or running for, but see, I wouldn't have had a chance because those are partisan ones. In fact, in the past, I have ran for the assembly and the state senate, and I got like 6.5% and 7.5% of the vote. But here's what happened. You know, they were able to set me up and get me in contact with some of their guys, and I went ahead and paid them, and I set them up with Airbnbs and gas cards. They had their own cars, but they were amazing. They were absolutely amazing.
So I reached out to Young Americans for Liberty, the same thing, because I ran as a libertarian, and in Jacksonville, local city council is partisan. So I did have an LPF next to my name, and it was the same thing because I wasn't running in a state level race. They couldn't really help, and I was like, "Have you guys?" I feel like they or an organization needs to create something specifically for local races, like Young Americans for Liberty for local races, because I feel like you only needed, not only needed, but you had like 9 canvassers, and they worked their tails off, and that's a big county. I mean, that's the thing is,
Well,
there's a
we
lot of
knocked on
doors we got to knock, you know?
we knocked on 85,000 doors.
Yeah. So that's a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I probably knocked on, me and my volunteers, 5,000. You know what I mean? Maybe 10,000, but and I did the text app thing.
Right.
Purely, I think is the name of it. So I used that and sent out text messages, but I only raised $20,000. So
Well,
that's
look,
you.
look,
I mean, you got that experience that we all need to be picking your brain. We need you to write us a roadmap, a how-to, you know what I mean, a guide to running as a libertarian. You know what I mean? Like, you've done it and you've done it successfully.
well, believe it or not, there's actually was a podcast from 3 or 4 years ago with Matt Kippy and Free the People. It was an hour-long interview at Freedom Fest, and that's on YouTube. And that turned out there was a young gentleman from 29 Palms, another city in San Bernardino County, who ended up seeing my podcast on how to get elected in a local office as a libertarian. And he did exactly that, and he got elected. And now he's my good friend, and I actually mentor him some. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and this is what I tell people. And what I'm going to say even after this is going to be quite a bit different. There's getting elected, and then there's governing. You've got we look at in politics, in retail politics, there are people that have the it factor. They've got charisma. They're not afraid to get out there and talk in front of people, and they're marketable. You can't market somebody that is gloomy Gus or back in the shadows or won't go out and work their tail off. A lot of times, remember, money's a big part of it. You can look at a particular race and say, here's what it took for the person to win this, who won this in the last 20 years, whatever it was. Is it 5,000? Is it 20,000? Is it 2 million? You've got to identify that number and then say, can I go out? Do I have a chance of actually raising that amount to make it? Because there's not going to be anything magical about you unless you're Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama or something like that. On that level, it ain't going to happen. And so you identify that race that you think you can win, and then you do all the things that are important, like join, get a member of that city's planning commission. That's the best commission you can be part of. Be a part of Rotary, be a part of the Chamber of Commerce. Get so people in the community know who you are. They see you then as a leader. And then show up, if it's a city council seat, show up and be that person that with those 3 minutes, you're really passionate about the issues that are really important to those people, but you're always respectful to the dais and everything too. And so you're not making enemies, you're making friends. And so when you do all that and you work your tail off and you actually get elected to an electable seat, now the hard part really begins. And that's what happened, when I became, in some ways, the highest elected libertarian in the history of our party. Nobody's ever had 500,000 people in their constituents, and actually, and I had 2.5 million total. I was making policy for 2.5 million people, but nobody's done that without changing their party or whatever. Ron Paul got elected to Congress originally as a Republican. Gary Johnson was a Republican governor and stuff. I've always been a libertarian. I'm very proud to be a libertarian. But when I got elected, I'm sitting in this big downtown office, and I go, oh my God, I've got to govern now. And I already knew how difficult it was because the other 4 members had 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, and governing is the really hard work. It's hard work. And the biggest and the hardest part of it is not to be caught up and start believing because you've got this big office and this title and everybody treats you like the most important person in the world, is to remain who you are and remain why you got. A good friend of mine, Aaron Starr, told me, Jeff, put what is important to you in your wallet when you get elected, and pull that out and look at it every so often and see how far you've strayed. I'm telling you, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or a Libertarian or a Green, we don't know what people are going to do until they're in office and they start governing. It takes a lot of hard work, and telling people who have supported you, especially with money and time and everything, and telling them that they're wrong. That's really hard.
Yeah. I want to expand on what you just said a little bit, because during the COVID pandemic, you stood out amongst uh, county supervisors all over the state of California as one who wanted to open up Riverside County. And Riverside County was one of the first counties to open up and throw a huge middle finger to Gavin Newsom at the risk of state funding. And what was your thought process while you were doing that?
Well, so when I came into the office, I thought, oh, good, now I'm going to get to work on this four billion plus unfunded liability and try to make CalPERS work and all this different stuff. But then shortly into it, that airliner landed from Wuhan, China, right in my district at March Air Reserve Base.
Yeah.
And COVID began for me, for real, on January 29th, 2020. And
Right.
and so I was like every other elected. I was seeing all these things coming out of China, Northern Italy, New York City. People were dying. We needed to buy. We have a huge county hospital in Riverside County. We have all these. We have 14 medical clinics. We have all these, and we had to get enough respirators, enough PPE. We're running around like a bunch of chickens with their heads cut off.
Right.
And everybody was doing that. And after that first initial rush came through, I have a degree in biology, so I know how to read data and analyze it and stuff. And I started looking at this. I go, wait, this is crazy. This 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and no. We're doing more damage right now by shutting down all these businesses. They won't come back. We're keeping people from going to school. We're doing all these different, and that libertarian in me really came out. I said, wait a minute. If you're afraid, then you go hide. Don't make everybody else hide. Actually, there was a big banner. One of my friends is a libertarian that kept his restaurant open the entire time. It said, "My rights don't end where your fears begin."
Right.
And that really, so that part of me was going, I've got to do something like that. So I couldn't get any of even the two Republicans, I couldn't get, because they were all worried about losing funding from the governor. And so in July of 2020, a few months after the lockdowns and stuff, I got my public health department to do an antibody study to see what the mortality rate really was, because the government was pointing out that, this is a 3 or 4% mortality rate. Nobody wants to see 3 or 4% of the people die. And so I said, no, it's not that. They're counting, confirmed cases. Confirmed cases mean nothing, because so many people that show no symptoms or very minor symptoms, they're not even getting tested. So why would confirmed cases even mean anything? So what I did is I did this gold standard of antibody studies. I predicted exactly the percentage that it was going to be, and it showed that the mortality rate was much less than 1%. In fact, less than 0.25%. And it was almost all on mainly elderly people. But it still was a serious virus. I mean, it was something to be afraid of, but it wasn't the overreaction. And when you do something and it's not gaining anything and just doing more harm, then you're terrible. And that's what, once you go down that path, and everybody was doing that, and even a lot of libertarians were. The Libertarian Party was divided right down the middle. There were half of them that said, do no harm. We should go along with all this. It's so dangerous. And the other half were saying, don't take away my personal liberties. I tended to be in the latter half. I was on the LNC at the time. We had a huge riff. We were going to have our national convention in Austin. That was shut down. And then we were going to go all virtual. And we really had to fight hard to get one down in Orlando. And I'll tell you that was a big deal. But I fought that. And then in January of 2021, 3 days after the riots on the Capitol or whatever, I got together with another county supervisor from Sacramento County, and we had 150 electeds from all over California. We had, I had a panel with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, one of the 3 signers of the Great Barrington Declaration, the world-renowned epidemiologist from Stanford University. I had Dr. Ladapo, who is now Florida's, Jacksonville's Surgeon General. DeSantis picked him. And then Dr. Fareed from Harvard. And I had these panelists, I had economists, and I had constitutional sheriffs. And after that 3-day conference that we had in an open air covered equestrian center in the middle of January, Governor Newsom the next day raised the stay-at-home orders for the 13 counties around Sacramento. And a week later, he raised them for all of California. I worked my tail off for that. People in Riverside County, many of them don't even know what their county supervisor did to get their county back open and on the ball. But that's what you can do. When you have this opportunity, whether it's a city councilman somewhere, whether it's a mayor, whether it's a county supervisor, there's amazing things you can do. You don't have to wait for your colleagues to believe what you're trying to tell them. You go out and you do it yourself. And that's one of the things I'm the most proud of, is actually getting California opened up, because lawsuits and protests alone were not working. But when Governor Newsom saw 150 electeds, many of which were county supervisors, and by the way, I did a lot of phoning. Most of them were too afraid to piss off the governor. But yeah, we did it. And that's what happens when you get a little bit crazy libertarian in there that doesn't care about his own ass.
So I just want to ask this, because moving forward, we spoke at Chase's meet and greet.
Right.
I was mentioning, I think libertarians have a grand opportunity in 2024 to be the adult in the room, because it's about to be a shit show circus,
right,
with Biden and Trump running against each other. The scenario that the overwhelming majority of Americans oppose is either one of these old ass geezers, the statist geezers, being the leader going forward for the next 4 years till 2028. How can libertarians impact this next presidential cycle?
So the one thing we have, and we worked really hard for it over the years, is we have ballot access.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of said that, and this is my own opinion, but the ones that we should be running for are electable local offices. So we work our way up, and we'll find out the ones that get elected that really don't buy into and drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and get caught up in their own magnanimity, and they're just no different than Democrats and Republicans. When we find those ones, they're going to work their way up. We're going to get some good ones, and all of a sudden, we'll see a couple more Marshall Burts in some bigger states and stuff, where there's that. We've got the libertarians kind of sleeper cell, like Thomas Massey. Mike Lee is a good guy. Rand Paul obviously has done a lot of great things, but we could get some real that put that L next to their name and stuff. And so those local offices, we got to do that for the next 20 years. That's what's so important. The presidential office is the only other one, because it brings so much to so many people. I can't tell you how many people have joined this movement, the Liberty movement, and especially the Libertarian Party, coming through Ron Paul or Gary Johnson. Those were the two big. I mean, they said, "Yeah, I came to the party. I liked what they said." So it's really important that we put our best spoken. Like you and I, Marcus, talked about Spike. You said you've known Spike forever. Spike ends up, when he was running as vice president along with Joe Jorgensen. Spike is such a good mouthpiece for libertarian ideals. He says it in a way where people go, God, you're right. Why didn't I think of that? And so I think whether it's Chase, whether it's, Lars, whether it's Mike, I believe the Mises has another one. I don't know his name yet, but when we come down to that, whoever we choose in Washington, D.C., next year as our standard bearer, it's real important that not only we get behind them, and we can talk about them being, the spoiler, the difference maker, whatever. I remember people say, we could be the kingmaker. We could be that 5% where the other two parties have to come to us. And then we start saying, okay, throw in school choice with vouchers or savings account or something. And then we may help you win this election. I'm going to tell you, you don't want to be a kingmaker. You want to be a king. And I say that facetiously, but listen, when we're in those seats, there is a lot of opportunity. But you're only going to get one chance, because if you truly are a libertarian, you're going to do things that are going to piss off the structure that has been there and stay there no matter who comes in and out of it. And that's your bureaucracy. That is your government workers. That is the unionized masses that keeps this monster going. And until we get rid of their effect, and actually they're unconstitutional, but until we get rid of them, we're not going to change anything. And that's why it's so important to get really well spoken. Chase is so good. You saw him speak, right, Marcus. We're going to have out of that group, whoever comes out of that, we're going to see someone, and we want to get him into media as much as possible. And then you've got Cornel West, and you got Robert Kennedy Jr., and you've got Jill Stein, and you still have people out there. But we got to concentrate, because you know what? We are the ones that are right. We are the ones that haven't changed our principles since the inception of the party in 1971. We are different than all the rest of the parties, but we also fight for the individual. And I guarantee you, when we allow groups to dehumanize individuals like they are in the Middle East, whichever side you're on, horrible things happen. We are the only party that stands for the individual. And when we can get into government and actually get your voice is it's a lot louder when you're in that seat. And if nothing else, get out there and talk about libertarian principles and show where they've worked, like they've worked in Calamasa. I also was the first one as a chairman of Riverside County in 2022. That was the first year we'd had a balanced budget in 14 years. But we can do things, but you can't make those big changes unless you get elected. So remember, you can get elected, you do all these things, you don't want to make too many promises, because believe me, people will hold you to them. But as you get elected, then the real work begins. And make friends with your colleagues. Doesn't matter, how far left or how far right they are. Find things that you can work on together. And, you might wake up one morning and say, wow, we actually got something done. Because there's nothing better than knowing that you actually, it doesn't matter if anybody else knows it or not. It's so important that you do that for yourself, because I'm telling you what, there is a couple things in politics. You have to be enough of a narcissist to love yourself when nobody else does, because you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, did you want to expand on that as the other politician? I'm not a politician. I'm just an angry black guy who hates government. And I have a problem with saying that, because we live in a republic, and hating government means you hate your fellow Americans. If you were truly living in the sense of the word of living in the term living in a republic of for and by the people. So I don't believe that you can be anti-government. Anti-government means you hate your next door neighbor. That means you hate the guy that lives 3 blocks away from you. That's anti-government to me. But Eric, did you have anything to expand on what he just said?
Well, Marcus, for the record, you're not a politician yet. We got time to change that, right? We can make you a candidate. You're electable. But
Jeff and Boomer and I, we're gonna work on that going forward. So
well, I think these types of conversations and these types of success stories, and we see the after the election day, oh look, we had 58 or 58 libertarians elected to office. They need, and maybe they do this, but they need to figure out how to get some more editorials about, Jeff, your experiences as a libertarian. You know what I mean? Like, we really need to, that media exposure, the fact that, you know, you're representing your constituents for what, 500,000? Is that what you said?
That's what, yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, like, that's pretty big deal. And you're governing, any policies you made affected over 2.5 million.
right.
Is that correct? So I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's bigger than Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got about 1 million people. Had I won in the at-large race, it would have been about 1 million people. You know, probably only a couple or less than 200,000 would have voted in that election. I don't even know the exact number. Jeff, I did want to know, did you were you involved with the party any before deciding to run? And if so, at what level?
You know, very good question. And so I was at registered libertarian all my life. I get out there and I'd vote for my libertarians when they were on the ballot. But it wasn't until 2014, 4 years after I'd actually been an elected libertarian, that I really got involved with the party. And, you know, I just, there was a state Senate seat that was coming up, a special election, because the Republican had resigned. He had had it with, you know, getting stabbed in the back, whatever. So my wife actually said, hey, why don't you run for that? It's going to be a short special election. And so I, you know, I ran as a libertarian against 4 others. There were 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. And I raised $18,000, which for libertarians quite a bit. But the sitting Republican assemblyman who won was 65% of the vote in the primary. You know, he had over $400,000. I mean, there was, and you know, but when I did that, I thought, oh wait, there's got to be a party. Let me see if I can get the party. So I called up and I talked to the state chair up in Sacramento. He says, oh, you know, and then I was treated like this special person. And the first state convention I went to in Visalia was 3 days after I lost in that special election. And so they said, hey, we want you on a panel. And I remember calling them back up after I lost. I said, hey, I didn't do very well. You still want me as a panelist? They go, no, dude, we knew you were going to lose, but you're an elected libertarian. You're on a city council. No, we want you there. I go, wow. This is a small pond.
Yeah.
And I've got big gills, you know? And so I went up there, and then Gary Johnson, you know, he had run as our standard bearer in 2012. He came on at the end of the convention on this big screen. It was Skype or whatever. And all these libertarians are getting up there asking him questions. I got up last and I said, hi, my name's Jeff Hewitt. I'm on the city council in the city of Cal Mesa. And I just ran in a special election for a state Senate seat. And everybody in there applauded. I mean, and Gary Johnson looks at me like, whoa, who's this guy? They had me. This party had me, and they're going to have to kick me out. I mean, I love this party. I mean, I don't care how we dress. I mean, we got polyamorous people that make bigamists look like, you know, old fashioned. I mean, we got everything. We've been fighting for, you know, gay rights and whatever somebody wants to put in their body, as long as they're not harming anybody else. Whose business is it anyway? And I love liberty. They're tough to talk to because they're so damn principled. Again, you know, there's the old joke about the only thing that 2 libertarians in a room can agree on is that there's only one true libertarian in that room. But you know,
read my name. What I'm saying right here. I'm the only real libertarian.
See, that's what I'm saying. The only real libertarian. He's got it. Yes, you know, there's 3 of us, and 2 of us are on the you know. So Marcus is, but this party's a great party, and you know, and it's had its rifts and it's got its different, you know, every group of people will have that. But I try hard to stay in contact with everybody. A lot of people that won't talk to each other or whatever, because I think this is the thing that's going to carry us across. This party, all the different hard work that people have gotten, ballot access for Gary Johnson and Joe Jorgensen and all the different people that have had 50 state ballot access. That is great. But we will have suitors like maybe even, RFK Jr. or something. If he goes, oh, wow, I'm 22% in the polls, but I don't have any ballot access. Well, good luck with that, trying to get elected with a bunch of libertarian delegates. I mean, we need to stand on what we've accomplished, but I think people need to follow my path and make a fool of yourself several times, get out there, running, Eric, you got to admit, it's kind of neat, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the experience as much as it was a stressful 2 years. And, but I mean, like, I met so many new people, made so many new relationships. I have no regrets with running. I'm likely to do it again once I figure things out later down the road. But I'm open to it, or I'm open to volunteering to help someone else. And I think like that's one issue is like there's a lot of people that have never had candidates run as a libertarian. Jacksonville, they might have had some years ago, but I don't think any time before the three of us decided to that they had to. Now they understand the process. And we got to start recruiting local candidates to run. You know what I mean? We got to keep them every election cycle. We need libertarians to be running in local elections.
Isn't Jacksonville just really a suburb of the America's oldest city, St. Augustine?
No, Jacksonville is its own. And Jacksonville is the largest city land-wise, though. And I want to say like
and it beats out Oklahoma City. It beats out Oklahoma City as the second. You're right. But it also it's not taken seriously because they have to share an airport with Savannah.
We got our own airport. If that's the case,
these are awesome.
No, I was just down there. I couldn't have told you any of this stuff, but this summer when I went to Freedom Fest back in Memphis, then we went over to what city in North Carolina are you going to, Eric?
Around the Winston-Salem area, High Point is where we're going to be living. So
as long as you didn't say Charlotte, I was like, okay, he's all right. So
I mean, like I've flown out of Charlotte, you know what I mean, but Jacksonville's big enough, and I kind of want a smaller town vibe, you know what I mean? So
Charlotte is a shithole. That's the only city I like in North Carolina.
Yeah,
I've flown out of the Raleigh airport a couple times, but no, my son lives back there, and he's near Durham, in a town called Hillsborough, which is they have an Orange County there, and that's but North Carolina is a beautiful, beautiful state.
Oh man, it is absolutely gorgeous. It's on my short list of states when I choose to leave the beautiful state of California at some point. But I wanted to ask you guys this because there is one aspect when I was looking at running, and it's the raising funds part. And the fact that there's filing fees and things of that nature that are cost prohibitive to a lot of candidates. How do we reconcile the government charging us so much money just to put your hat in the ring to be a part of our republic? How do libertarians actually move forward with like the fundraising?
Well, so let me just show you. I'll show you an example of it right now. Eric, hey, listen, you've been part of this movement for quite some time, but I've noticed that you're really into this and you want to see some things happen. And I'm running for this position right now. And listen, I can get some great things done. I've done things in the past, but I really need your help, Eric. I need your help. I mean, look, you can give all this money to taxes, you can do all this stuff, but when you put money behind a horse that not only has a really good chance to win, but is going to win. And when I do, God, I want you on the team all the way. But how much can you write a check for me tonight? I need that. I know you're not Bill Gates and all this stuff, but you're also someone who I can tell by that camper that you're pretty well to do, and you're supporting a family and stuff. So just give me some, and you got to be able to ask. Listen, hey, it's the hardest thing to do, but this race car can't win the race unless it has gas in the gas tank.
Right.
And if you can give me $500 tonight, you know how many signs that buys me in this particular neighborhood where I think if we pull this off, I win the race. And we're going to show that this city, again, places like Calamasa, places like Cedar Rapids, one libertarian gets into there and they change the world. We can do that together. I would really appreciate it. But you actually have to be able to ask. And I couldn't at all when I first started, but when you got somebody like a Boomer Shannon going, no, come on, call right now. And remember, you can't have other people ask for you. It makes you feel more important, Eric, when the candidate, calls you up and specifically asks, hey, how are we going to do this? We need to pull this off. And then when you say, well, no, libertarians always lose, I go, well, no, I've won 2 different offices. And this is what I've done. But here's what we need. And it's going to take a lot of you, Erics. But the good news is I've been doing this now for a while, and we're already raised this much. And we're already passing up our main opponent. But we're going to spend it well, and this is going to be a campaign based upon those principles that you and I both embrace. So see, you get that, and you do it different. But you first, when you call somebody up, you're saying, hey, Eric, how's it going? Were you able to bag any, whatever you're hunting for, whatever, it's just, but you bring how the kid's doing, you remember the kid's name and everything. That's just being, we need to build this fabric, and we need to build it extremely as strong as it can be, because the other 2 groups that are trying to keep us with their boot on our neck, so to speak, they have generations and generations of infrastructure. We need to, we can do this, but we can do this on local levels. And like I say, then let's get these people elected, and then let's see what they're really about. And I got a feeling a good 1 out of 3, 1 out of 5 might actually be worth their salt. But we got to start running a lot of them in winnable races. And then as far as let's stand up behind our standard bearer, whether he doesn't know where Aleppo is or something. I was so shocked when I was getting really excited. They were 13% in the polls, but he's too. But he's human also, and so let's focus on the future, learn from the past. But yeah, there's a huge desire for people to get rid of these other 2, parties that's the best they can do. Yeah. Donald Trump and a Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? Those 2 guys have no business being anywhere close to any source of power.
A lot of times
no. Now, we talked about this in our pregame on off-limit subject matter. I just want to ask you real quick, because we're wrapping up on we're coming up on an hour, and we try to keep it about an hour because
right.
Americans have short attention spans naturally. But I'm gonna say names of candidates that have declared, and if I can get a 1 sentence on each one of them, I'd greatly appreciate it. And so we're going to talk about the last guy that we had here on the Black Powder podcast, and that was Joshua Smith. That's his name, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can we get a statement on Joshua Smith from you?
Extremely likable guy. Joshua and I were on the LNC together. I will probably not be supporting him.
Okay. You don't have to say that much, but I'm just saying.
I like Joshua. I like, but
cool. Okay, so next we have Chase Oliver.
Chase Oliver is right there in one of my top ones, and has the experience of being up in TV, up on the big stage. Very, very good at representing libertarian ideals. I'm excited to see where he can go.
Excellent. Next up is Lars.
Probably the one that has come the farthest from the first time I met him. Extremely bright guy. Again, seeing him up there on the stage on a panel with Larry Elder, who's no slack.
Yeah.
Lars actually did better at Freedom Fest. So again, these are tough ones. Both Chase and Lars are very good racehorses.
Okay, and Mike Tremont.
Mike Tremont, I haven't gotten to know as well. The few times I've seen him, talk to him, really stand-up guy. Certainly will be in the running.
And what's that guy? Rechtenberg or
Rechtenwald?
Rechtenwald. I saw that on some Facebook thing or whatever. Don't know him. So I really no comment. I don't know who he is.
Eric, do you have anything you want to wrap up with as we start to close out on our episode? This has been one of the best episodes since we had Mary J. Ruard on here. Dr. Ruard was one of my favorite guests ever, and you're right up there with her as far as
wow. Well,
we've had her on.
I mean, this was great. I hope a lot of people come back and watch this episode. You got a lot of experience to offer the party, a lot of information. I want to ask you, have you ever thought about running for chair of the LNC?
It has crossed my mind before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go wherever I think I can do the most good for this movement.
Gotcha.
And I'm the one guy that's clueless. I'll make a fool of myself. I will, I've stood up and introduced Brett Pajunas. I didn't make a fool of myself with that, but I mean, he'd asked me to, and watch Mr. Weeks do a striptease thing on C-SPAN. I almost went up to take him off the stage, but then I said, wait a minute, we're libertarians. That'd be going completely against what I believe in. But as a county supervisor, I thought I did a lot of good for this. The front page after of the LA Times said, "Can libertarians govern?" That was a big deal. And the things that I've accomplished, but that's nothing compared to what we do. So I'm a team builder. I want to, if it were in that place, I would do it. Or like I say, if I feel, I'm going to tell you this. The fundamentals of governing are the same, whether you're in a small city or whether you're president of the United States. There's just more zeros, that's all. When you build a team, you put competent people around you, and not necessarily all libertarians, because you want to see every angle coming in from everything. But remember, when it comes down to you, I have no problem making any hard decisions and taking responsibility for the way they go. And again, I'm going to do in the future whatever I can to get this great state and this great country back to where I know we can be, and back to those founding principles that we're pretty much all libertarian.
I want to, as we start to wrap this up, I want to go back to one of the most important factors of this episode, and that was Mr. Jeff Hewitt was one of the first people in the semi-communist state of California that pushed to reopen businesses during the COVID pandemic. And I want to say that's what libertarians do. And you look at his resume, whether it's the city of Cali Mesa or the county of Riverside. And I live in a 4-county area. There's Los Angeles, Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County. Roughly, that's 15 to 17 million people. The greatest urban landscape in the whole state the whole country.
Right.
That is the biggest population center in the whole country, is this 4-county area. And we have a libertarian that stood against the overwhelming majority from the state of California to say, this is what we need to do. We need to get people back to this economic principle of basically getting people to commerce with each other, because this isn't something that needs to shut us down. And Mr. Jeff Hewitt was, if not the biggest leader in that movement. And that's what libertarians do when they govern. So I want to thank you for what you did in our great state of California, because people talk shit about California, rightfully so, 98.5% of the time. That's just a random number that came to me. But California has a lot of shit that goes wrong, but we have guys like Jeff Hewitt that go right. And I want to thank you for your efforts and what you've done to display libertarianism to the American people.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcus. And after all those nice things that you said about me, you are the only real libertarian.
You know,
Right there.
I am the oddity that actually praises other libertarians instead of talking shit about them.
And Eric, listen, hey, I had a little bit of fun with you with Jacksonville and stuff, but traveling throughout the country and stuff, hey, everybody's the same. They really, well, actually, they're not. I spent a week up there on my buddy's ranch up in Montana, and everybody's a libertarian in Montana, whether they know it or not. They don't need the government for anything, and they're very self-reliant and all that stuff. But most of the rest of the people, look at, and as libertarians is, we have our nice set of values, and nobody's ever going to take those away from us. But we got to learn to make friends with complete progressives and sometimes crazy far-right Republicans. And, and when, as we make, like I say, I had an hour-long conversation with Larry Elder at 4 a.m. the other day. And, he was somebody that helped me stay as a libertarian. Now he's gone to the dark side in some ways and all, but he still has a lot of good, and he espouses a lot of good things about libertarianism. And so we still have to reach out there and make a lot of friends. And when we do, we don't end up having to do what Hillary Clinton wanted to do and put everybody in a re-education camp. No, we want to persuade people, not coerce them. And I think we have that ability if we just start realizing that, yeah, we're right, but we don't have to act so arrogant about it. And we get people on, and one little thing at a time, all of a sudden they go, yeah, that kind of works. Especially when all the prosperity comes from using free market, economics.
Yeah. Eric, what's your closing statement after this episode?
Jeff, just want to say it's a pleasure meeting you. I'm glad I got to come on the podcast and hear your story. Continue doing what you're doing out there on the West Coast, and seriously, hope this isn't the last time we have a conversation. I think you got a lot to teach me and or other libertarians that might be interested in running for office. So thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot. And it's been a real honor to be on your show. Like I say, I'm here. I'm older than dirt, and I'm just feeling like I kind of know what I want to do when I grow up.
Well, I'm 50. I just recently turned 51, and I still don't have a clue what I want to do. I'm in between competing on barbecue pit masters and breeding East German sable German shepherds. I'm just totally confused. But I want to say this. This has been one of the most important episodes of the Black Powder podcast ever, because it has been one that showed the reality of libertarian governance. And this is a man in Jeff Hewitt that has walked the walk and talked the talk. And one thing I don't like in life is a bullshitter. And when I grabbed my cup of red wine up in Bel Air at that $3.2 million home, Jeff came up to me, introduced himself, and I immediately knew this was going to be an awesome experience for me at that moment. And it has been compounded with the awesome experience of you coming on our podcast and delivering a message of optimism. Because so often, and I'm not trying to diss my homies, but so often with libertarians, we talk about, we know we're going to lose this election. And that's one thing we understand, that we're in an uphill battle. But when we have a success story of like a person like Jeff Hewitt, we could say, you could talk all the shit you want, but we got examples. We're bringing receipts to the battle now with Jeff Hewitt, because he has shown success. And I always tell my kids, failure is more of a lesson than a detrimental effect to your life, because you learn more through failure than success, because failure is a horrible teacher. And in life, you get the test and then you can study for it. And when we have a person like Jeff come on, we could look at the success and we could learn from that, and we can learn from our failures, and we can move forward. So I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the Black Powder podcast. And I would love to speak to you again in a few months. And as we approach the conference in the state, I will be, I think it's February 23rd to the 25th in Anaheim. I'm going to be in Texas watching my son play baseball, so I won't be able to make it there. And it freaking bummed me out. But thank you, Mr. Hewitt, for coming on and sharing your resume and your experience in the Libertarian Party. It was very effective, I believe.
Thank you both so much.
All right. So, in closing, all the people are applauding, all the people that watch live. This has been the Black Powder Podcast with your hosts, Marcus Matthews and Eric Parker, Bold Liberty, excuse me, my good brother, and Mr. Jeff Hewitt, Riverside County Supervisor, Councilman, Cali Mesa, Libertarian that didn't destroy either entity he was elected to represent. So, America, I ask you to give Libertarians a chance. FGB is if that's the right one, and screw Trump too. They're both criminals. You could pick your poison, but you're both going to be poisoned. And as we close, as we always say, live free
or die.
Yes, sir. Peace.